I walked into my courtroom that morning and felt it immediately. That tension in the air told me someone thought the rules didn't apply to them. I've seen that look before, and I never like what follows it. I took my seat, adjusted my robe, and looked straight ahead. That's when I saw her sitting there like she owned the place. Designer clothes, expensive bag, and an attitude that didn't belong in my courtroom. She didn't stand when I entered, not at first. That alone told me everything I needed to know about her. People who respect nothing usually end up learning everything the hard way. "Good morning," I said, my voice calm but firm. She finally stood up, slowly, like she was doing me a favor. I immediately knew this case was going to be a problem. "Sit down," I said without hesitation as soon as she moved wrong. She rolled her eyes and crossed her legs like she was at home. That small gesture told me she believed she was untouchable. "My father is the police chief," she said casually, like it meant something here. I didn't even blink when I heard it, because I hear that line too often. In my courtroom, titles outside mean nothing inside. "I don't care who your father is," I said sharply. "You are in my courtroom and you follow my rules." That's when I saw the first real crack in her expression. The plaintiff sat across from her, nervous and clearly uncomfortable. He looked like someone who had already been dismissed too many times. And I could tell he was telling the truth just by how he held himself. "Tell me what happened," I said, turning my attention to him. Before he could finish, she interrupted with attitude in her voice. That was her first mistake in my courtroom. "Don't interrupt me again," I said immediately, cutting her off mid-sentence. Silence hit the room like a hammer falling on glass. And in that silence, I realized something was very wrong with this case. She smiled anyway, like none of this applied to her. But I've learned something over the years about people like her. The louder the confidence, the faster it usually collapses. I leaned back slowly and looked at both of them carefully. Something about her story already didn't sit right with me. And I had a feeling I was about to find out why. Then I said the words that changed everything in that room. "Let's take a look at the evidence." And that's when I saw her confidence shift for the first time. But what happened next? Even I wasn't ready for it. She leaned back like she wasn't worried at all, but I could already see the small tells in her behavior changing. People who are innocent don't usually act that confident in my courtroom. I was driving normally. She started, trying to control the story. Her voice was sharp, but her details were vague from the beginning, and vague stories are usually where lies start to hide. "Be specific," I cut in immediately without letting her continue freely. She frowned like she wasn't used to being questioned so directly. That reaction told me she's used to people backing down. "I was near Main Street," she said, slowing down slightly. I tilted my head because she couldn't even name the exact intersection. That's not something someone forgets if they're telling the truth. The plaintiff finally spoke up, voice shaking but steady enough. "I was stopped at a red light when she hit me from behind, and I could hear truth in the way he didn't over-explain anything." She immediately laughed like his statement was ridiculous, but people laugh the hardest when they feel the most exposed, and I've learned to notice that pattern very clearly. "So you're saying he was stopped?" I asked her directly. "Yes, but that's not what happened," she replied too quickly. That too quickly is exactly what I was waiting for. I turned slightly toward her and narrowed my eyes. "You're already adjusting your story under pressure," I said calmly, and that's when I saw her confidence start to tighten. Then I heard something that changed the direction of the case. The plaintiff mentioned there was traffic camera footage available, and the room shifted instantly when those words were spoken. Her posture changed for the first time in a noticeable way. Not fear yet, but discomfort she couldn't fully hide anymore. That was the moment I knew we were getting closer to truth. I looked at her and said nothing for a few seconds, because silence in my courtroom often forces people to reveal more, and I could tell she was about to slip up. "Let's see the footage," I finally said to the bailiff. Her eyes locked forward now, no longer relaxed like before. Something inside her story was about to be exposed. And I could already feel it coming. The part she thought she controlled was about to control her instead. The courtroom went silent the moment the screen turned on. I didn't say a word because the footage would speak for itself, and people always reveal themselves when they think no one is watching. The intersection appeared clearly on the screen. Red light, stopped traffic, everything exactly where it should be, and I already knew what the truth was going to show me. "Right there," the plaintiff said quietly, pointing at his car. He was completely stopped, exactly as he had described before. No hesitation, no exaggeration, just simple facts. Then her car entered the frame at speed, no braking, no slowing down, just direct impact from behind. And that's when I finally looked at her face again. Her expression changed the second the collision happened. The confidence she walked in with was gone instantly, because evidence doesn't argue, it just destroys lies. "Stop the video," I said calmly without raising my voice. The bailiff paused it exactly at the moment of impact, and I let the silence press down on her. "Explain that," I said while looking directly at her. She tried to speak, but her voice didn't come out right. That's when I knew she was starting to panic. That doesn't show everything, she finally said weakly. I almost smiled because I hear that line every time. People always deny what they can't control. So what doesn't it show? I asked slowly. She hesitated, and that hesitation said more than words, because truth doesn't usually need time to think. Then I asked for the footage to be replayed. But this time I wasn't watching the impact. I was watching everything before it happened, and that's when I saw it clearly. Her head was down for a split second too long enough to explain exactly what went wrong. I turned toward her slowly, letting it sink in. You were distracted, I said firmly, not asking any more, and that was the first time she couldn't respond. Because deep down, she already knew the truth was out, and I was only getting started. I didn't need more noise in my courtroom. What I needed now was the truth from someone who couldn't escape it. And that's exactly why I called the witness forward. Her friend stood up slowly from the back of the courtroom. I watched her carefully as she avoided eye contact with everyone. That's usually the first sign someone is not comfortable with the truth. Name, I said without emotion. Alex, she replied quietly, almost unsure of herself, and I already knew this was going to get interesting. You were in the car, I said firmly, not as a question. She hesitated before finally nodding, yes, and that hesitation told me everything I needed. Tell me what happened, I ordered calmly. She looked toward the defendant for approval before speaking. That alone told me she wasn't ready to be honest. Don't look at her, I said sharply. This is my courtroom, not hers. And that's when she finally turned back to me. She was driving, Alex began slowly, voice shaking. The light was red. And she didn't stop in time. The room changed the second those words came out. The defendant immediately reacted in anger. That's not true? She snapped without thinking, but I raised my hand and shut it down instantly. Sit down, I said coldly without raising my voice. She obeyed, but her face was already losing control because now someone else was telling her story. She told me to tell her if anything was coming, Alex continued, but she was looking down, like she was texting. And that was the moment everything started collapsing. I didn't look away from the witness even once, because truth always becomes clearer when people stop performing, and this witness was no longer performing. I turned slowly toward the defendant again. You were texting while driving, I said flatly. No, she said immediately, but her voice wasn't strong anymore. And that's when I realized something important. She wasn't just lying now. She was running out of ways to lie. I've watched people try to talk their way out of trouble, but there's a point where talking stops working completely, and she had just reached that point in my courtroom. I asked for the photographic evidence to be displayed. The screen lit up with a clear image from inside her car, and the entire room went silent again. There it was, her hand holding a phone. Mid-text, just seconds before the collision happened. No interpretation needed, no excuses possible. She shook her head immediately when she saw it. That could be anyone, she said quickly, too quickly. But even she didn't sound convinced by her own words. Anyone wearing your bracelet? I asked calmly. Anyone driving your exact vehicle? I continued, and I watched her confidence collapse further. The plaintiff didn't even look surprised anymore. He just looked tired. Like he already knew this truth, and I understood exactly how long he had been waiting. You were texting, I said again, more firmly this time, and you hit a stopped car while doing it. She didn't respond because there was nothing left to say. But I wasn't finished with her yet, because negligence is one thing. But lying under pressure is another level entirely. You came into my courtroom and lied repeatedly, I said. My voice stayed calm, but the message was sharp. And now she finally stopped interrupting me. Her eyes dropped for the first time, not anger anymore. Just pressure she couldn't handle. That's usually where reality finally sets in. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. And for the first time, she sounded human instead of entitled. But intent doesn't erase responsibility in my courtroom. You don't get points for regret after the damage is done, I said. You get consequences for the choices you made before it. And that's when I knew the case was finished. I closed the file slowly in front of everyone, because once I close it, there's no more running. Only judgment remains, and she finally understood that truth. Too late. I could feel the entire courtroom waiting for me now, not for more evidence, not for more excuses. They were waiting for the moment I end it, but I wasn't in a hurry, because people like her always think the final moment will save them, and I wanted her to sit in that hope just a little longer. There's something else in this file, I said quietly. Her head lifted immediately, reacting before she even understood. That reaction told me she was already exhausted. The time of the crash, I continued. 3:42 p.m., I said, confirming it out loud, and I watched her carefully as I said it. Why does that matter? She asked, trying to sound strong again, but her voice didn't carry the same confidence anymore. It was forced now, like she was holding it together, because I said slowly, that was during school zone hours, and I let that information sit in the room for a moment, because consequences always feel heavier when they're understood fully. You were speeding in a restricted zone, I added. No, she interrupted quickly, but I raised my hand, and she stopped immediately without another word. Don't argue with what's documented, I said firmly, and don't insult this courtroom with denial at this stage. That's when I saw her completely lose her balance. Her shoulders dropped slightly for the first time, not anger anymore. Just pressure she couldn't carry, and I knew she was finally understanding the situation. You didn't just cause an accident, I said. You made multiple reckless decisions in sequence, and that distinction is what changes everything in court. The plaintiff sat quietly now, finally seeing justice forming, not excitement. Just relief that the truth was visible, and I respected that silence more than anything else. I turned back to her one more time. Do you understand what you've done? I asked. And this time she didn't answer immediately, because for the first time in this entire case, she didn't have a story ready, only reality, and I was ready to deliver the final judgment. I've been a judge long enough to recognize the exact moment a case ends. It's not when people stop talking, it's when they finally understand there's nothing left to say. She was sitting there now, quiet for the first time, no attitude, no interruptions, no confidence left to perform, just the weight of everything catching up to her. At once, I looked down at the file one last time. Everything was documented, confirmed, and backed by evidence. There was no mystery left in this courtroom. This court finds you responsible, I said firmly. Reckless driving, texting while operating a vehicle, and causing damage. And I let each word land clearly in the room. The plaintiff exhaled like he had been holding his breath. For days, he didn't celebrate. He just finally looked relieved. And I understood exactly what that relief meant. You will be held liable for all damages, I continued. Medical expenses, vehicle repair, and lost income. And there was no hesitation in my ruling. She stared at me like she still couldn't accept it, like reality was optional if she disagreed with it. But courts don't work on belief. They work on truth. Then I added something she didn't expect. Your behavior in this courtroom was also noted. That's when she finally looked nervous again, because she still didn't understand one thing. The case wasn't over just because the accident was. Courtroom behavior matters just as much as evidence. She suddenly stood up again, too fast. Are you seriously doing this to me? She said loudly, and that's when everything changed in an instant. I didn't move. I didn't react emotionally. I just looked at her. You don't speak to me like that in my courtroom, I said coldly. But she was already overwhelmed, already past control, and then she did the unthinkable. She spat right in the direction of the bench. The room froze instantly. No sound, no movement, just shock, because there's no coming back from that. Bailiff, I said immediately, my voice steady and final. Take her into custody, and there was no hesitation this time. She struggled as she was restrained. This isn't fair, she shouted, panic replacing arrogance, but fairness was never the issue anymore. You assaulted the court, I said calmly, and now you face criminal charges. And that's when she finally realized the truth. This wasn't about her father, this wasn't about status or attitude, this was about consequences catching up at last. As she was taken away, I looked at the courtroom one final time. Respect matters, I said quietly, and in here, it's not optional. I closed the file, case finished, and justice had spoken.